Hello, I'm Alec from the Global X research team. It is a pleasure to meet the Murray Asset Security Smart Muddy audience through this video. Today we will dive into climate change in 2022. Global temperatures over the last decade averaged around 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer than pre-industrial times. At this level, we are already seeing concerning climate change externalities, such as extreme temperatures, droughts, ocean acidification, and increasing natural disasters. Thanks to recent work from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, we now know that human-caused greenhouse gas emissions are almost entirely to blame. As you can see in these charts, there is a causal relationship between carbon dioxide emissions and rising temperatures. Carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases that blanket the atmosphere and retain heat. Concerningly, carbon dioxide concentrations have risen 43% since pre-industrial times. Again, almost entirely because of human activity. At only 2 degrees Celsius of warming, we are likely to see significantly worse externalities. Many climate change impacts are likely to become both more frequent and more intense. According to the IPCC, extreme heat events would occur 5.6 times more often and be 2.6 degrees Celsius hotter. Additionally, extreme precipitation events would occur 1.7 times more often, while extreme droughts could occur 2.4 times as often. Without major global efforts to fight climate change, we could easily see 3 degrees Celsius warming by 2100. The good news is that experts believe we have the time and agency to mitigate climate change. Many believe if we can hold long-term warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can prevent catastrophe. You can see in these charts that reaching this goal would require global net emissions to effectively fall to zero by 2050. Renewable energy is perhaps our most important tool to achieve this goal and mitigate climate change, because these sources do not contribute to net greenhouse gas emissions. One significant challenge is that renewables produce energy sporadically instead of on demand. This dynamic is called variable renewable energy, or VRE, and occurs because renewable energy sources are subject to changing and sometimes unpredictable environmental factors. A great example of this concept is solar generation over a typical day. In many regions, solar panels reach peak production at midday when radiance is highest, but this is not when peak demand arises. Peak demand is generally during the night when, of course, the sun is not around to drive solar production. What results in most markets, both on a daily and a seasonal basis, is a disconnect between maximum renewable energy production and maximum energy demand. You also see this framework visualized on the right-hand chart here. We are already developing solutions to this challenge, such as specialized lithium batteries or hydrogen storage, which can capture surpluses of renewable energy generation for later use. In many ways, energy storage could cover problems presented by VRE. If a renewable energy producer can store excess energy, this increases the amount said producer can eventually contribute to the grid and seek compensation for. Therefore, not only does energy storage boost the efficiency and flexibility of renewable energy, but it also helps from a financial perspective. We are seeing that renewables projects are increasingly including storage options. For example, the US will likely add 8 gigawatts of energy storage in 2022, an increase of 56%. Continued progress on the energy storage front could extend the reach and versatility of renewables. Absolutely. In short, we believe hydrogen can become an important tool to extend the reach of renewable energy. We already produce and use 75 million tons of hydrogen annually, but the vast majority of this supply would not be categorized as green hydrogen. Most of our hydrogen is produced by a process that releases greenhouse gases, which is referred to as gray hydrogen. Currently, we mostly use this gray hydrogen for industrial purposes, such as in the production of fertilizer or in the refining of petroleum. The challenge and opportunity for the space is to shift production towards renewably powered electrolysis, a process that can split water into hydrogen and oxygen without contributing to net emissions. Once a supply of green hydrogen can be established, there are two chief use cases we are most excited about. One use for hydrogen could be as a clean fuel source. Equipment such as fuel cells produce electricity using hydrogen, only emitting water vapor and heat as byproducts. This technology could help decarbonize the transportation segment through heavy-duty hydrogen-powered vehicles, or power buildings sustainably with stationary fuel cells. Another use case, which I previously mentioned, is for energy storage. We can direct excess renewable energy to power electrolyzers, which are the machines that carry out the process of electrolysis. Once you produce hydrogen sustainably, the option exists to utilize it as a clean fuel source at a later time. Producing this green hydrogen is currently quite expensive, but we could see green hydrogen costs approach $2 per kilogram towards the late 2030s, as you can see in this chart. At this point, green hydrogen would become cost competitive against traditional fossil fuels. As cost dynamics improve, we expect to see green hydrogen begin to offer significant support to our climate change efforts as a fuel source and as an energy storage option. Improving cost dynamics have been perhaps the most important driver of renewables growth over the last 20 years. Indeed, global renewable electricity generation has nearly doubled since 2010. Much of the decline in costs are attributable to improving economies of scale and manufacturing techniques, but we are also seeing tremendous innovation in the underlying technology. For example, solar efficiencies have increased dramatically over the last several decades, as you can see here. The first commercially available single-junction solar cells were only about 4% efficient, but we have since developed several technologies to boost efficiency. The introduction of multi-junction solar cells, which leverage multiple layers of semiconductor materials to absorb a wider range of light, raised the ceiling for what is possible for solar efficiency. Multi-junction cells can achieve near 40% efficiency in lab conditions, and this is still a far cry from the 68.7% theoretical limit for this technology. Continued improvements to efficiency should prove valuable to solar PV system operators who would like to generate as much power as possible per a given amount of space. Similarly, the total cost associated with produced wind energy decreased as turbines grew larger. In this case, the greatly improved efficiencies offered by larger rotors reduced costs from an electricity generation standpoint. Overall, the levelized cost of energy from utility-scale wind and solar fell 56% and 85%, respectively, between 2010 and 2020. Such innovation allowed renewable energy to become less expensive than fossil fuels in most markets, as you can see in the bottom right chart. As such, we can economically justify replacing traditional energy sources with renewables. We are likely to see momentum continue this year for renewable capacity additions. Green hydrogen and offshore wind are two younger segments that could experience significant capacity growth in 2022. At the end of June 2021, there's only about 300 megawatts of green hydrogen capacity in the world. With significant projects in the pipeline, this capacity could grow quickly. For example, Egypt hopes to bring a 100 megawatt green hydrogen plant online by November 2022. The project would be the largest of its kind and increase global green hydrogen capacity dramatically. We're also seeing progress for offshore wind farms in the US. In February, construction began on the South Fork Wind Project, which will be a 130 megawatt commercial scale wind farm. The US currently only has 42 megawatts in operational offshore wind, so the new projects like this represent significant growth over pre-existing capacity. South Fork Wind is just one of many offshore wind projects that are set to begin construction over the next 5 years. We're also seeing promising dynamics in terms of renewable share of new electricity capacity additions. This year in the US, a projected 63% of new utility-scale electrical additions could come from solar or wind. Globally, we expect to see renewables continue to account for the bulk of new energy additions due to cost competitiveness and the need to combat climate change. Thanks for having me today. I hope today's interview helped you get a better understanding of climate change. If you have any questions, you can visit our website at www.globalxetfs.com or our social media. Thank you for watching.